Okay. Part of the transition process is visioning what your community, what my community might look like in 20 years' time if we were to have tackled these two imperatives of rebuilding resilience and reducing carbon drastically. I can close my eyes and I can kind of see it.
A well-transitioned city, I think, would smell like fresh air.
It's much quieter, it's much cleaner. Life has slowed down again to a considerable degree.
Less stressful.
Every time I ride down that road, I think, what a fantastic space this would be if it was a multi-use space, if we had fruit and nut trees in the middle of it, so that people thought this is a resource for us, not just somewhere to travel. If we had seats in the middle of it, so that people could sit and chat. If those trees and those seats were arranged so that if you drove down it, you had to drive very slowly because you couldn't see what was coming towards you, then suddenly it would be somewhere where, yes, people would travel, but they'd travel at a human speed, which enabled it to be a social space, a space where people might travel, they might talk, they might play, they might do any of those things which all human beings need to do to lead a rounded life.
I see people working much more from their locality and from home, travelling less to London. We have a lot of people who travel to London every day.
And there'll be a lot of rubber, a lot of tyres that simply aren't being used. And my shoes will come from local cows and the tyres from the cars in my town that have been discarded because they're of no more use, because people aren't travelling 300 miles to go to a football match.
We will be much less the consumers that we are today and much more kind of producer consumers. So rather than just our food coming from a weekly dash around a supermarket, our food will also come from our growing some of it ourselves, our working with other people to produce some of that.
By that time, everybody would be able and would know how and got land to grow some of their own food, what we should eat, how we should eat, in a way that is good for our health and also minimize the environmental burden. It's very much in part of the traditional Chinese culture.
Eating seasonally, eating what is available rather than feeling that you need to eat apples all year round. But having a strong sense of self-sufficient food production, which also brings with it a very strong community element. Because effectively, if we're all going to grow our own food, there needs to be much stronger interaction with farmers. Today that's been completely lost. People need to start growing their own food as well. That happens in partnership. You do it together with friends and your communities. So very strong bonds around food.
There will be a national grid for electricity, and that national grid will be augmented and made more resilient by local energy production, maybe from the Dart River where I live. There's some micro hydro. I would hope that we're smart enough to be able to position wind turbines in what can be very, very windy place.
But the focus of the economy is much, much more local. It's much more inherently local. If you want something, chances are, if it could have been produced locally, it has been. So that looks at food, but also at building materials, and everyday household objects.
I see also the jobs changing. So people, learning skills again, learning to do things that we've lost the ability to do because we felt that it didn't contribute to economic growth. But actually, if you take economic growth out of the equation, spending time doing things that are useful to you, but maybe don't have the same net present value as other things, would be a perfect use of time.
We're all going to have a much more equal share, I believe. That's what people see again and again envisioning, and that's a huge change, to persuade people either to let go or to support them as their enormous bank balance disappears through, the financial system collapsing, to readjust to their worldview and to come back to a sense of belonging, where their money has enabled them to live separately. How do we break some of those walls down and come back to really living together and sharing each other's fate?
There'll be much more meaningful work, people will be much more skilled, people will spend more time together socially, creating music. We won't just get all our entertainment consumed through the television, we get our entertainment from telling each other stories and so on.
You are aware of your neighbours, you are aware of your community, you know if people are in trouble and you act in accordance to that. You feel supported by the people around you.
How do we hold community process? How do we make decisions together? How do we respect each other even though we're really different?
Where are the kids going to school? You know, what are they learning?
Taking responsibility is the other thing, I think, with regard to climate change and peak oil, coming from a place of gratitude for what we have rather than entitlement for what we think we deserve.
Fearless old women kind of coming back into taking charge of things, and you know, grandmothers who feel they have nothing to lose of their dignity or their kind of position.
Way more fulfilling, it's more connected to community, to family, connected to land, and is more energizing and more fun.
For me, that vision which is almost sort of, you can almost touch it and almost smell it, is the thing that draws us towards it. It's like a whirlpool that we throw in front of ourselves that creates the force that pulls us towards it.
And when we look back, having reached that transition point, we say, how on earth could we ever have conceived of living any other way?